Welcome back, Irish fans, to Breaking Down Braves Boys podcast. Notre Dame's biggest domino of the offseason has fallen. Blake Wesley has indicated to Jonathan Givony of ESPN that he will not return to Notre Dame next season and he will enter the NBA draft. And Blake Wesley will be the first one and done in Notre Dame program history in the men's basketball program, and that's certainly something to be proud of for him. Blake Wesley's career will be a career defined by betting on himself. Over the course of his senior year, he was kind of dropping hints, senior year of high school, kind of dropping hints that his goal was to one and done, and he thought he was a lot better than his rating, and he was right. I think throughout his career, Blake Wesley was called crazy at times for saying that he wanted to be a one and done. This was over a year ago. He was at the back of the top 100 and didn't have all that many big-time offers. Obviously, he had good offers like Purdue, Notre Dame, Louisville, but wasn't considered an elite recruit and was talking about one and done. Over a year ago, people called him crazy. People said he wouldn't translate well enough to the college system, and he did. He bet on himself. He had extreme confidence in himself, and it worked out. So good for Blake. A lot of people are still saying he's not ready, and he certainly has things to work on. I'll get into that a little bit later, but I do think he can develop in an NBA system, develop playing off 2 feet a little bit under NBA coaching. Shooting is really fixable, especially for a guy who's hit threes before. He can obviously take a leap defensively because of his size and just wiriness, explosiveness defensively. And I think staying composed is the biggest thing with him generally, and hitting shots. And I think an NBA system will really help him to do that. And even though he hasn't polished his game yet, he's certainly an NBA prospect, and I think people need to look at the NBA draft boards and see that most of these guys are not finished projects. Not everyone is Paolo Banchero, not everyone's a Chet Holmgren, who isn't even a finished project himself, and Blake Wesley is certainly an NBA prospect and one that is certainly deserving of the praises he's gotten on the floor and off it too. But I think the biggest what if for Notre Dame men's basketball will be, what if Blake Wesley came back and played with J.J. Starling for that 1 year? The only other one that comes to mind recently at least is, what if John Mooney came back to play with that team with Prentice, Cormac, Trey, all those great guards? They were really missing a presence down low. What if John Mooney was that? But that's a discussion for another day. Notre Dame would have had maybe their best backcourt ever with those two guys, certainly their best since the second Elite Eight team. 2 potential NBA players in the same backcourt would be something to see. But moving on from here, Notre Dame still is in a solid spot. Cormac Ryan really broke out at the end of last year and broke out at the end of the year before that as well. I think we really saw what he could do when he has a long leash and is able to play off the bounce the way that we know he can. If he can do that consistently, a backcourt of him and J.J. Starling is one of the best in the ACC and one of the better backcourts in the entire country. Add a potential Dane Goodwin return to that. Notre Dame's in an awesome spot there, and then maybe you get one of Trey Wirtz or Prentice Hub back as well. So Notre Dame's certainly in a good spot. Blake Wesley wasn't the end-all, be-all. He really would have helped, would have made Notre Dame into a preseason ranked team, which they still could be. But Notre Dame is still in a really good spot, regardless of Blake Wesley's decision, assuming some of these seniors will come back and play with J.J. Starling. But this year we saw Blake Wesley was uber talented, had a heck of a year. Certainly had games where he didn't look like a pro, but there were also flashes of, like, the Louisville game on the road, I remember vividly, was maybe Blake Wesley's best pro showing at Notre Dame. Just looked so composed, was getting to the rim anytime he wanted, getting downhill, and playing off the bounce. Blake Wesley was incredible that game, and he can be incredible when he slows down. All the NBA potential skills that they're looking for are there. He can get his own look. He can hit shots at a somewhat high level right now, and I think his ceiling as a shooter is somewhat high as well. We've seen him hit a ton of big shots throughout his career. He's clutch. He kind of has the it factor, and Notre Dame is certainly going to miss him next year. J.J. Starling is awesome. J.J. Starling's ready to play. I think J.J. Starling might be the most college-ready player I've seen that Notre Dame has had, at least as a senior in high school. And they're still going to miss Blake Wesley. And he's Notre Dame's best driver, probably their best off-the-dribble scorer, probably their most explosive athlete. Even when Robbie Carmody is fully healthy, I think Blake's probably their best athlete. At least their most practical athlete. Robbie Carmody can do a bunch of crazy dunks, but I think Blake uses his athleticism a little bit better. And we've seen that he can be a great defensive piece. He's done a really good job on the Buddy Boeheims. I guess that was the only one that came to mind, but there's others that he's done a really nice job on. And when he fully buys in defensively, it's something to see. And I think he's done that a little bit more throughout his career, and that's really exciting for him as a prospect. So Blake certainly had a good career at Notre Dame, and I think him being a one and done really helps Notre Dame in terms of recruiting. Obviously, they're still going to have to recruit those certain types of kids that the academics line up and all those things, and their pool is going to be limited in terms of a one and done. But now part of their pitch can be, hey, we had a McDonald's All-American last night, and tonight we had a guy declare for the NBA draft, and he's going to be a legitimate first-round pick, one and done. Now the narrative of, oh, Bray won't play freshmen, even if they're ready, it's really hard to argue that, because Blake Wesley, it was a one and done, and Mike Bray typically hasn't had players like that. Even some of his best players didn't contribute all that much early, and Blake Wesley was different. He contributed early, and you saw flashes all year of being an NBA prospect, and he turned out to be that. So, again, well-deserved honor for Blake Wesley, and really looking forward to seeing how he develops as an NBA player. He's got things to work on. We saw that in the Texas Tech game, but when you look back at even the Alabama game the night before, or 2 nights before that, Blake Wesley looked like an NBA player for about half that game. He didn't hit a three, but had 14 points and essentially iced that game for Notre Dame. But Notre Dame fans are going to have great memories of Blake at the school, and he was a big piece to this tournament team. And Notre Dame, I think, is in a nice spot to become a tournament team again. They don't seem to have as high of a ceiling without him, but a backcourt of Cormac Ryan, J.J. Starling, all those type of guys, Dane Goodwin, maybe Troy Wirtz or Prentice Hub stays now that they have that gap in the backcourt and need some playing time out of one of them. Notre Dame's ceiling is still really high, and if they can handle the front court the way they need to, or even the way they did this year, if they get someone who's almost as good as Paul Atkinson, this can still be a really good team. And even if they don't do a perfect job in the portal, if they get a solid big man and they get Cormac Ryan back, they get Prentice Hub, who I'm not sure is coming back, if they get Trey, Dane, all those type of guys, if a few of them come back with J.J. Starling, and then you can get some contributions from guys like J.R. off the bench, Ben Lubin, maybe Dom Campbell, maybe Matt Zona, Elijah Taylor, this team could be really fun, and it could be a very likable and good team again. And, man, Notre Dame's future is exciting, but like I said, Blake Wesley not coming back is a what if, but overall, heck of a year for Blake Wesley, and was maybe the biggest reason they made the tournament. I think Atkinson maybe was a little bit bigger of a reason, just because he filled a need that they so desperately needed to fill. But Blake was the guy. He was the guy with the it factor. He was the guy they turned to at the end of games, and people seem to forget what he did at the end of the Kentucky game when they look at the Texas Tech game. Blake still had some really solid moments at the end of games. Notre Dame won their biggest game of the year. They don't go to the tournament if they don't beat Kentucky, and Blake Wesley called the game against them. So there was a lot to unpack with his freshman year, a lot to unpack today. What a wild day in terms of his announcement of what he was going to do. But ultimately, it seems like he'll end up in the NBA, and it's a big step for him, and it's something Notre Dame's going to have to fill. But luckily for them, they have all those seniors who can step into playing time and can really just be good college basketball players alongside J.J. Starling, who will look to become the second one and done in Notre Dame's program history. But overall, heck of a career for Blake Wesley at Notre Dame. And this is a great recruiting tool for them. Now you can pitch to recruits, hey, we've had guys like Blake Wesley and J.J. Starling come through the program, and Blake Wesley's a guy who wasn't all that highly recruited, but we believed in, and he had success and was able to go one and done. It'd be even a bigger recruiting pitch if Blake turns out to be a really solid NBA player. But Notre Dame's recruiting seems to be on the uptick, and having a guy like Blake Wesley go one and done is going to help them for sure. Obviously, it would have helped them more if Blake took him to an Elite Eight or something like that in future years. But man, the way he played this year and the way Notre Dame has kind of become nationally relevant again in terms of their recruits is something that should be really exciting. And Blake Wesley was a contributor to that. I still will never understand how he wasn't a consensus top 100 prospect. I think he had a lot of work to do from his junior to senior year, but he just got so much better. He bought in. He had a new high school coach that really helped him develop. I think playing with Indy Heat going into his senior year was huge for him. And you just see how much better he got coming out of the pandemic. And it seemed like he matured a little bit. Seemed like he was able to find his shot a little bit and became a much better passer as well. So shot selection was better, passing was better, the IQ for the game was better, and overall was just a completely different player. It seemed like you always saw the tools as a junior, and that's why Notre Dame recruited him. That's why a lot of schools recruit him. You saw the tools, and senior year you kind of saw it come to fruition, and it was really exciting to see all that come to fruition in his freshman year of college, and saw what he could do against some big-time old ACC players. And he's believed in himself this far. We'll see if he can do it in the NBA. It's going to be his toughest challenge yet, but I guess we'll kind of see what he can do at that combine and what he can do at some of those pre-draft events. Those are going to really determine if he's leaving or staying. I would assume he's going to leave. It doesn't really seem like he's bought in on the idea of staying. It seems like he'll end up leaving, but all those pre-draft events are going to be huge for him. And I think he's actually built to kind of succeed in those, in the open floor type of game. I think his game might, a fully sophisticated Blake Wesley package, like at his peak, I think is better designed for the NBA, just playing in space, playing in isolation. I think that's part of the reason he picked Notre Dame as well, just because the floor is spaced well. He can get to the rim, he can take his guy off the bounce, but the NBA, I think the floor is spaced much better than it is in any college scheme. And if Blake can be in the right situation where he's kind of got the keys, which is going to be hard to do early, but if Blake can be in a place that's confident in him and allows him to take his guy off the bounce and have somewhat of a long leash, then he can be a really special NBA player, assuming he learns to play off 2 feet a little bit more and stay composed, play more within himself, and then develop his shot a little bit and develop his shot from the line. So Blake has all the potential in the world to be a good NBA player. He's got all the tools that NBA teams look for, and now he's just got to do it. And I do think he can do it. I'm sure I'll be covering his NBA games if he has a big game or whatever. But again, hats off to Blake Wesley. Heck of a career at Notre Dame. And all the people saying he's not ready and all that, we're saying that coming out of – they were saying he couldn't one and done years ago. And I think – I'm not sure he's a finished project. He certainly would have benefited from the Jaden Ivey thing if all went well, of coming back and working on kind of honing those type of skills. But he's ready to go now, and you can't really fault a kid for making a decision like that where he's going to be a millionaire next year. And he's going to be able to live his dream of playing in the NBA. I don't think Blake Wesley's dream was to play in college, and it kind of seems that way based on him leaving. But heck of a career at Notre Dame, and excited for the future of both parties. Seems like Notre Dame, well, they obviously have some big dominoes to fall, but if those dominoes fall right, then Notre Dame is in a really good spot heading into next year, and Blake Wesley's in a position to most likely live his dream next year. So worked out for both parties. Obviously, I think all Notre Dame fans were hoping he would stay, but I can't really fault him too much. But thank you guys for watching. I'm sure I'll be back, hopefully with some better news for Notre Dame in the coming days. And I appreciate all the support throughout the season, and I hope people keep watching now that Blake Wesley's not a part of the program. There's still exciting times on the horizon for Notre Dame, and this was not the end-all be-all for them. But bright future for both sides, hopefully, and that's all I really got today. Thank you guys for watching. Peace.